All right. So welcome to part 2 of our Planning and Strategic Initiatives Committee meeting today. This is a formal public meeting to consider applications under the Planning Act. If a person or body that would otherwise have an ability to appeal a decision of the City of Kitchener to the local planning appeal tribunal, but the person or public body does not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make written submissions to the City of Kitchener before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal that decision. So tonight we have 3 planning matters to discuss, and then we have also our final vision of our development services review. So first up is the zone change amendment application for 100 Seabrook Drive, and we have Ms. Julianne von Westerholt, who will provide a 5-minute PowerPoint presentation on this matter and respond to questions regarding this report. All right, Ms. von Westerholt, if you can click in.
Chair.
All right.
Good evening, Mayor Verbanovic and members of the committee, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here this evening to present applications made for official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment by Activa Holdings. The subject property is located at the northeast corner of Fisher-Hallman Road and Seabrook Drive in the Rosenberg planning community. Before I continue with my presentation, I'd like to point out 2 minor typos in recommendation D section. In line 3, the special use regulation referred to should be 330U rather than 300U. And in line 4, the current zone of the subject land should read from residential 6 rather than residential 3. This has been discussed with clerks, and the recommendation has been corrected, and the bylaw remains unaffected. So moving on to my presentation, the applicants, Activa Holdings, have made applications for official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendments. The proposed developments will have a medium intensity of use along Fisher Hall corridor, and this will consist of stacked townhouse-style developments with heights ranging from 3 to 4 stories, or approximately 13.5 meters. In addition, the applicants are proposing 400 square meters of commercial uses along Fisher-Hallman Road, as well as 10 live-work units facing Seabrook Drive. The site has a surplus of 77 parking spaces to accommodate the proposed uses, including 18 spaces for the commercial uses, as well as 8 barrier-free spaces and 46 visitor spaces. The lands closest to the existing residential subdivision in the Huron Community Plan along Valencia Avenue will be limited to residential uses only in the form of back-to-back towns with a maximum height of 11.5 meters to ensure a more gradual transition from the more intensive uses at Fisher-Hallman Road to the low-rise residential subdivision, which typically has a maximum height of 10.5 meters. Non-residential uses along Valencia Ave are prohibited, and this is again to ensure that there's a more compatible interface between the residential subdivision and this development. To conclude, the effect of both amendments would align the zoning with the land use designation in the Rosenberg Secondary Plan and would bring the Area 2 portion of the subject lands into the Rosenberg Secondary Plan area while removing it from the Huron Community Plan. This would ensure that the site has one land use designation and one zone for the entire site. The amendments would facilitate the development of the subject lands for lower intensity of mix of uses comprised of commercial, live-work, and multiple residential uses at densities that would support transit and promote walkability, which are key objectives of both the official plan and the Rosenberg Secondary Plan. The amendments to the official plan and zoning bylaw are more consistent with the provincial policy regime and conform to both the regional and city official plans. The applications represent a better use of land and infrastructure and are considered good planning. This concludes my presentation, and I welcome any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we have some questions for you. Councillor Singh.
Is there delegation from the applicant as well?
Oh, sorry, yes. We do have the delegate, Mr. Paul Britton, from MHBC Planning.
Then I can just ring back afterwards.
That's fine. Yep. Would you like to come down, Mr. Britton?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair and committee. My name is Paul Britton, and I'm appearing on behalf of the owner, Activa Holdings, Inc. And I would say from the outset that we do support the planning staff recommendations, subject to the two typos that were referenced by Ms. von Westerholt. And just in terms of our project team, obviously the developer is Activa Holdings, Inc., and Alex Subner is here with me this evening. Kate Wills from my office were the planners, urban designers. Stantec Consulting are the engineers, and Turner Flesch are the consulting architects. Just in terms of context, the subject lands are shown in the red and are at the intersection of Fisher-Hallman Road and Seabrook Drive. Seabrook is a major entrance into the community, and Fisher-Hallman Road is a planned transit corridor. The two blocks are included within a draft-approved plan of subdivision, and all infrastructure necessary for the development was constructed as part of the original phases of the development. In terms of surrounding land uses, at the southern corner opposite on Seabrook Drive is an existing commercial development that's partially developed. Immediately across on the west side of Fisher-Hallman Road are some existing stacked townhouse units. And then further to the east, existing single detached development at the intersection of Valencia and Seabrook Drive. And then there's some existing townhomes in the area as well. Quite briefly, the official plan amendment proposes to incorporate what we're referring to as Phase 2, the heavy black lines, as part of the Phase 1 development, such that the lands can be comprehensively planned and designed together. And the official plan amendment gives some fairly specific direction to the zoning bylaw to limit the height and to restrict the uses to residential. I would note in terms of Phase 2, those lands are currently zoned for townhouse development, and the stacked towns as they present to Valencia will present very much like the existing as-of-right zoning provides for. This just elaborates in terms of existing zoning, and I would note that in terms of Area 1, it's currently zoned for big box development and is a carryover of the previous land use planning that took place. So the applications before you this evening are intended to implement the Rosenberg secondary plan as well as the new official plan which has recently been approved. There's existing design guidelines within the Fisher-Hallman Road corridor, and the intent is for these lands to develop in a compatible but a more intensive way in support of higher order transit, which is planned within the corridor. There's some specific directions in terms of building mass and landscaping and essentially animating the street along Fisher-Hallman Road as well as Seabrook. And this is the concept development, and some key points to highlight. Obviously the massing of the streets, the buildings towards both Seabrook as well as Fisher-Hallman Road. Pedestrian scale, internalized parking, and some emphasis in terms of building elevations and design. This is the mixed-use block, which is at the immediate intersection of Seabrook and Fisher-Hallman Road, and sort of bookends with the commercial development, which is on the southern side of Seabrook. And along Seabrook Drive, the intent is obviously to mass towards the street, to have human scale and pedestrian activity towards the road, which is allowed for the internalization of the parking. This is the enhanced pedestrian connection within the development, and that connection then leads to the park and school, which is internal and developed as part of the earlier stages of development. So that with that, we would thank you for your consideration, and I'd be pleased to answer any questions.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Councillor Singh.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Could we go to the slide with the overview design layout? Yeah, Mr. Britton, so looking at that, currently it's zoned R3, correct? The parcel?
The parcel in its entirety has two zoning categories. One is a B3, and that's phase one, which permits the larger box type of retail. And then the parcel which fronts onto Valencia is currently zoned R6, and that zoning category currently permits single semis and townhouse development.
So you could have done 3-story towns as of right already as is?
Correct.
Yeah, so it's not too much of a change.
That's correct.
From the existing use. So I don't have much of an issue over that. I think this is probably better designed than what the current existing zoning outlines. My only issue is with the green space. Are you guys meeting the green space requirements, or is that site-specific you're looking for relief?
There's no change in the landscaped area requirement of the zoning. The zoning bylaw, I believe, has a requirement of 10%, and our overall landscape proposal is 30+%. So we actually exceed the landscape requirements of the bylaw.
Okay. I'll ask staff if they're comfortable with that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we have no further questions at this time for you. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
All right, questions of staff?
Yes, thank you. So again, similar to my earlier question about landscape area, the intensification for residential here is more than, I guess, allowing for part of this parcel, which would have been for a box store. Seeing that there's going to be far more residential now under the proposed development, staff are satisfied with the available green or amenity space that's outlined.
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, as Mr. Britton indicated, the minimum required landscape area is 10%, and this plan exceeds that, so staff is satisfied with the connectivity that's achieved through the site and connecting this site as well as Fisher Hallman to the parkland that's in the Huron community. In addition, with respect to the densities achieved, the Rosenberg community anticipated densities along the corridor in order to support transit. This is in line with that and actually would bring the zoning in line with the existing official plan designation on the subject lands. So.
Okay, just when we look at like a larger site like this that can accommodate such an intensification, which is a positive for the community, especially on a major arterial road off of Fisher Hallman. Just so that we, for good urban design, do staff look for more tree coverage, especially in like the parking area? Is that something that can be easily accommodated? I know that they would probably have to lose some parking spots, but is that a good trade-off to have a slight relief on the parking requirement to ensure that there are more tree planting along in the parking area? So there's more tree coverage canopy.
Through you, Madam Chair, staff worked very closely with MHBC Planning and Activa in order to achieve the linear corridor that is transecting the site, and it is intended to be a tree-lined corridor. So yes, I think there has been much effort made in terms of ensuring that there's additional trees on this particular site.
Awesome, glad to hear it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. There are no further questions on this matter. Who would like to move the matter? Okay, Councillor Michaud. All right. Any comments? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. All right. Next, we have zone change application for 450 Bridgeport Road, Willow Homes. So we do have a presentation from Mr. Andrew, from Ms. Della Ross. All right.
Madam Chair, I'm wondering if it would be possible to flip to item 4.
Okay.
Andrew is actually speaking to a couple of members of the community that need some information on his.
This just in.
This just in.
Okay.
Forget all that, Madam Chair.
All right. Are you ready, Mr. Pinnell? We'll give you a second to settle. All right. So we're going to have a presentation from Mr. Pinnell, a 5-minute PowerPoint, and then we also have a representative of the proponent. So first, Mr. Pinnell, when you're ready, please click in. Please click your mic. There we go. Thank you. All right.
Through you, Madam Chair. The subject property is located on the north side of Bridgeport Road between the Highway 85 on-ramp and Lancaster Street. The surrounding neighborhood is composed of mainly single and semi-detached dwellings with 3 churches interspersed. The subject property is a large lot that has a width of approximately 51 meters, a depth of 124 meters, and an area of 0.7 hectares, which is about 1.6 acres. The property is currently zoned R2 in the city zoning bylaw and is designated low-rise residential in the official plan. And on the screen is a map showing the location of the lands. Late in 2016, the applicant approached the city as part of a pre-submission consultation process. At that meeting, they showed a concept plan with 17 townhouses plus 1 single detached dwelling for a total of 18 dwelling units, with all townhouses fronting onto a private road. The proposal also included a request to change the zoning from R2, which allows mainly single detached and duplex dwellings, to R6, which allows multiple dwellings, townhouses, and semi-detached dwellings. At that time, planning staff recommended to the applicant that they reduce the density and retain the R2 zone because the proposed development was too dense in the context of the surrounding neighborhood. And that's the initial concept plan that we reviewed as part of the pre-submission process. As a result of the conversations with planning staff, the applicant submitted the subject zoning bylaw amendment, along with an urban design brief, which changed the dwelling type from townhouses to single detached dwellings, reduced the number of dwellings from 18 to 8, and retained the R2 zone. Planning staff consulted the neighborhood at a January 2018 neighborhood information meeting and worked with the applicant to further refine the proposal based on neighborhood feedback. As a result of planning staff's discussion with the community, departments, agencies, and the applicant, many additional revisions were made to the development concept. For example, side yard setbacks were increased to provide a greater buffer to homes that back onto the development, front onto, specifically the homes that front onto Lang Crescent to the west. The shared driveway was realigned away from the side lot line to preserve some perimeter trees. A 6-foot-high fence was proposed around the perimeter of the property, and front yard setbacks were increased to better align with the neighboring homes on Bridgeport Road. And there were a number of other changes as well that I haven't included. The revised zoning bylaw amendment retains the R2 zone and adds a site-specific zoning provision to allow 8 single detached dwellings on 1 lot and ensure an appropriate minimum lot area as well as setbacks. The associated urban design brief informs the requested zoning and provides the basis for future site development. The conceptual rendering shown on the screen is perhaps how one of the single detached dwellings may look. This rendering is included in the urban design brief to provide direction on design for the future site plan process. Highlights and conclusions. This proposal represents a positive evolution from 17 townhouses plus 1 single detached dwelling to 8 single detached dwellings. The proposal was refined through public consultation and discussion with planning staff, and the resulting proposal represents balanced intensification that is appropriate and sensitive to the neighborhood. The revised proposal would facilitate a development density that is only 15% greater than the properties that front onto Lang Crescent. The proposal puts an innovative and unique spin on a common dwelling type by allowing several single detached dwellings on 1 lot, orienting those dwellings towards a shared driveway, and proposing condominium tenure. Planning staff is of the opinion that the proposal conforms to provincial, regional, and city policy and represents good planning. Accordingly, staff recommends that the zoning bylaw amendment and urban design brief be endorsed and provide the basis for future site development. Thank you, and I'm here for questions.
Okay, thank you. I think first we'll hear from the delegate, Mr. Brandon Flewelling from GSP Group. Hello.
Hi, good evening. As mentioned, my name is Brandon Flewelling. I'm the planning consultant here on behalf of Willow Homes, the applicant and owner of the subject property. I'll keep it brief. We're here in support of the staff report and the recommendations. We've certainly worked with staff over a period of about 2 years now to come to the point where we're at today. The original proposal was more intensive than what's proposed now. And we think we've landed on a sort of a happy middle ground, if you will. It increases the density and use of the existing property, which is a large single detached residential lot. It provides a form of housing with single detached homes that's consistent with the surrounding neighborhood. And it oriented, the two homes along Bridgeport Road are oriented towards the street so that, you know, the general streetscape still has that same feel of front doors onto Bridgeport Road. So we've come quite a long ways on this one, and I think it's a unique form of housing. There's another example on Glasgow Street that staff had pointed to when we were having the initial discussions, and it operates as a condominium as well, and seems to have a fairly good reputation, if you will, in the area of being a nice form of development. So we're happy with the recommendations of the staff report, and we certainly heard a lot of comments at the neighborhood meeting and made revisions to the site plan to try and address some of those comments. A lot of them are sort of site design details like increasing setbacks, including some armor stones and so on at the end of a turnaround just for additional safety on site and that type of thing. So with that, I'm happy with the staff report and recommendations, and just here to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you. We do have some questions for you. Councillor Ioannidis.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Marsh. I really don't have much of a question, and it's more of a comment. I just wanted Mr. Flewelling to pass along, having dealt with Mr. Smith before, I'm really pleased with what I see here, and I think he's really upped his game, so I just wanted to show that I appreciate what he's brought forward.
Thank you. I'll pass that along.
Okay, there don't appear to be any further questions. Well, actually, I have a question for you. So those neighborhood concerns, do you feel that you have addressed them adequately?
I think so, to the extent possible. Again, intensification is proposed, and it is change in the rear yards of the existing neighbors. Fully acknowledge that. But I think the setbacks that are proposed, we're proposing rear yards onto rear yards where possible. The units at the back end of the site will be a side yard orientation towards the existing rear yards on Lang Crescent. We've proposed armor stone and fencing to make sure that there's no safety concerns from cars turning and movements and that type of thing. So I think to the extent possible, the changes, we've done things like, as Mr. Pinnell identified, bringing the common condo road more into the middle of the site, again, to try and retain some of the existing trees on the property. A lot of them will have to go. But I think to the extent possible that an infill development can address the concerns of the adjacent neighbors, I think we've done a pretty good job, and staff has had a lot of input on getting to this point.
Okay, thanks. And my last question is just about in the staff report, it talks about how native trees will be emphasized in the design, and I just want to know, is there a definition of that? I mean, will it be mainly or half, or like I take it that neighbors have asked for native trees to be planted, and just wondered what your take is on, what's your commitment regarding native trees?
Well, certainly that's the direction, I think, with any new developments, is that native trees are the focus of the species that are identified. This proposal, assuming the zoning were to go forward, it would be subject to full site plan approval, and a detailed landscaping plan would have to be prepared and approved by city staff. So the very specifics of the trees and any species proposed would have to meet current guidelines and be supported by staff. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Do we have any members in the gallery who are looking to speak tonight? Yes, so come on up to the podium, and when you're finished, if you can please see our clerk to register, okay?
Okay.
And anybody who wants to speak also needs to register with the clerk. All right, and so welcome to our meeting. Delegates have 5 minutes to give their presentation, and then there may be questions of you after, okay?
Okay. So we don't really have a presentation. We just have a question for the developer. Something that we had discussed amongst the neighbors, and we have a question in regards to the street itself. So the lane that they've created, so the driveway that is facing our backyard, why was it never considered to be placed on the other side where there's no homes? So that would make us a lot more happy, and probably it would have cleared up any frustrations on behalf of all the neighbors. So our question is to the gentleman who's the builder. Was that ever a consideration? Was that ever considered? Why is that not happening?
Okay, is that your only question? Is that?
I don't know. Do you have another question?
No,
you had a question about
the
water drainage?
Well, we had a concern about, within our original meeting with the gentleman, about water and retention and a lot of the trees. And our first initiative was that they were going to cut all the trees down and replace with native. But there's trees there that are over 100 years old, that are in our backyard, that are shade and privacy. And removing all those trees, I think, is very wrong. The solution that my wife and I looked at was the moving of the street to the other side, where there's less trees.
And no properties.
So trees could be saved. Like there hasn't been a lot of thought put into this, I don't think.
In regards to our concerns.
Our concerns, yeah. We had many concerns at that meeting. Obviously, we can't bring them all up today, but
they're in the report.
We're trying to get our voice across, because our house and our neighbor's house, which is here as well, are the two being most affected, in our opinion.
I think that gentleman as well.
Okay. All right. So, so thank you. So what we're going to do is we'll ask you to stay here at the front, and there's a question of you, and then we'll ask the delegate to respond. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Sorry, yes, yeah, thank you for coming. I just wanted to clarify. So, please don't tell me the number of your address. You don't have to in a public meeting. But I assume that you're on Lang Crescent that intersects Bridgeport, right?
No,
we're down. So we're on the diagram. We're number 103.
Okay, but the end of your street is like basically you can turn left, and you turn coming from the expressway. You turn left off of Bridgeport onto Lang Crescent, and you're along that stretch before the corner, right?
Correct.
Okay. So from my understanding, and maybe I'm looking at this wrong, but the driveway, I believe, does go on the the roadway.
No, it comes right back into our backyard, actually into our neighbor's backyard, who has a 3-year-old child.
Do you mean the cutoff driveway or the main driveway that...
The main driveway comes up the center of the houses, and then you'll notice that it veers off to the left. Those are our homes, literally, directly behind that spot.
Okay.
So our question was, why did it not go to the other side? Why are those houses... all they have to do is flip it. It's a mirror image.
Okay, we'll hear from the delegation on that. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Those are all the questions we have for you. Maybe we'll just take all the delegates and then ask the consultant to come back. Hello.
Hi. My name is Lori Waller, and actually I'm next door neighbors to here. And if you have a look at the diagram, the road goes into sort of points towards the backyard. That would be my backyard. So I think when we're talking about a bit of a happy medium earlier on, I think it might be a happy medium between some others, not the people that actually live in the community. It's quite concerning that I would have vehicles driving towards my backyard, and I know they've made some compromises when it comes to the height of the wall and the make of the wall, but it's still a huge concern because we have a garden that would be right but up against that particular wall that we built for my daughter, and she plays in that every day. So that now puts a whole new spin on what we do in our backyard and the privacy that we would have back there. And, you know, with all due respect, they've made some changes, but at the end of the day, it poses, regardless of what kind of wall, other than perhaps a steel wall, Here she is. Perhaps a steel wall. You know, at the end of the day, there's been cars that have driven through concrete walls many times before, and that's a huge concern for us and would absolutely take away from our family's backyard entertainment of any kind, specifically this one. I didn't ask her to come down at that moment in time. It just happened to work out that way. So that is a huge concern. I don't think it was, you know, as much as there's been some changes take place, I think, you know, there's the ones that have made decisions on some of those changes are not the ones that live on Lane Crescent, whose backyards would be right up against here. And again, if we did a mirror image and flipped it to the other side, I don't think we'd be talking about as much of a concern. And, you know, certainly property value, privacy, because realistically, it veers up quite a bit. So any houses that would be right against that wall are absolutely looking directly into our backyard. It doesn't matter if it's a 4-foot, 6-foot, 12-foot wall, they're looking directly into our backyard, and that takes away the privacy. So that's a huge concern for us, but more so the safety.
So, sorry, you're saying, so you would like to see what the other delegate would like to ask is to, you're asking why didn't the developer consider the road to be flipped, just the design to be mirror image?
Well, because on the property behind, you know, when we are on Lane Crescent, we're talking about the property, there's a property on the other side of here that has been vacant for over 20 years. So why would the homes not be closer to that direction and the road be closer to that direction where there are no people that are living there on a daily basis, there's no concerns, there's no backyards, there's no any of those sorts of things. We're not concerned that the development is going there. We're concerned about our privacy and our safety. And if it was mirrored flipped the other way, this wouldn't be the case.
Okay, thank you. Okay, is that all the delegates from the community? Oh, yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Councillor Singh.
Point of clarification, what might help for the delegate, do you mind if you can put this slide up? That way they can pinpoint exactly how they're being impacted, because from what we're seeing is the roadway is already onto the other side already, so it's just so we can get clarification from them.
Okay, so there's homes on either side. Is Councillor Singh? Sorry, one sec.
Yeah, so now that they can see exactly, so they can explain it to our benefit a little bit better. Can you point it out the way you see up top?
Okay, sorry, what was your question?
So the roadway already seems to be on the other side where there's just seems to be one home, as you said, it's been vacant for a long time. Whereas all the other properties where you are, that's not where the roadway is right now proposed.
Yeah, this is completely different than what we've been shown, so I don't think we're looking at the same thing here.
So if we showed you on there. Yep.
There we go.
That's the same thing.
It is, but it's just not kind of a different view in terms of us. So what my concern is that going up that road, turning left, the triangle pointing there, that is our backyard. So that's my concern, is that there would be traffic driving down there, and regardless of what kind of wall is there, it is still a major safety concern, because right on the other side of what you're looking at is where that garden is built. So that would no longer be the case. And again, the one where it says Unit 1, the top left-hand corner, as much as some of the other units have been moved back, that home, you know, unless it's about this tall, is definitely going to be looking into our backyard as well as our neighbor's backyard, and no matter what we do, there'll be no more privacy.
So aside from the privacy, I appreciate the comment about safety. Sure. Because vehicles are coming in, accidents can happen. Sure. But the fact that through the site plan process, again, there is an extensive process the staff engage with the developer and making sure that those issues and concerns are mitigated. And I think through the presentation, they already addressed that they maybe an ask for armor stone and, of course, a fence, 6-foot fence. Those two things combined would not address your concern for safety?
Safety, perhaps.
I completely understand your point. At the end of the day, I'm a parent who doesn't want an accident to happen, so I will try my best to prevent it, which means we no longer will spend time in that area. So does it take away a large fraction of that? For sure. Does it take away 100%? No. I'm not willing to take that chance on my daughter, for sure.
Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Those are all the questions we have.
Thank you.
All right. One more neighbor. Hello.
Hi there. Just another neighbor on Lang Crescent. So we have a lot of concerns as well, some similar from what...
Sorry, can you just state your name for us, please?
It's Jesse Bryant and Vicki Vantoff. So we're also neighbors of theirs. So yes, we have a lot of similar issues with this whole proposal. One for me is just that right now I see a house 3 meters off my backyard property line. I know they've tried to increase the setback, but I'm still well aware that with their excavation, their digging is still going to practically be on my property. It's going to wreck my trees, my gardens. They're all way higher, like elevated, than all the rest of our properties. It's going to be like 60 or 70% of that lot likely that's excavated in native soil. Water is going to come down on our lots, and they say, oh, they're going to prevent it. I'm still very worried about all this. Even our property values, like all of us bought into these places because we like the privacy, the wooded lots. And all that's going to be gone. I don't really think that's fair for all of us. There's tons of other large undeveloped lots on this whole neighborhood. Where does it stop? Like, do we just let anyone with a big lot throw a dozen homes on or whatever it is? I think the area is nice for what it is, the way it is. I really don't think 8 houses or 7 houses or 12 houses, whatever they want to put on it is the way to go about it. I know they've shrunk down in sizes, but at the end of the day, I still think it's far too many. It's too dense, and it's gonna affect all of us. So. Okay,
thank you very much. I don't see any questions for you, so thank you very much.
Okay.
We're going to ask Mr. Flewelling to come on down, and if you could just address the concern about the possibility of flipping the design so that the setback from the houses is not a concern as much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to respond to some of the questions. We've certainly looked at a number of different layout possibilities for the site, and ultimately the reason this orientation was chosen is because of the existing grades on the surrounding properties. It's to be able to make sure that the stormwater management plan can suitably ensure that stormwater is protected on the site. Again, the property has to match existing grades at all of the existing property boundaries. So the intent is to slope down from the east side towards the condo road, and then sort of level out so that you can have the existing homes, and then ultimately they would back onto the homes on Lang Crescent. From a grading and servicing standpoint, it just doesn't work the other way. If it were a simple flat property and a swap could work, it certainly could be considered, but it just doesn't work from a grading and stormwater management perspective. The second question, or the second point, was the one about the turnaround and safety, and we certainly heard that comment loud and clear. It's a very valid concern, and as you can see at the end of the turnaround road in front of Unit 1, at this point we haven't gone through full site plan approval, but the idea is there'd be a full boundary fence there, but then also armor stone at the end of the roadway to stop any runaway cars from being able to jump the curb and run into the fence. I think staff has certainly heard that comment at the neighborhood meeting and again this evening. And if something more than that is required, something greater than armor stone that can be done, certainly consider that. It's a very valid comment, and this was our first proposal that some significant armor stone should be sufficient to stop a car that's going to be traveling on a small internal road to begin with.
Okay.
But it certainly, we're not ignoring that comment and want to make sure that the site is designed appropriately. And the third comment was just about stormwater management. And the proposal on this property is for on-site infiltration. There's a large infiltration galleries proposed in the rear yards and throughout the site, really, to make sure that stormwater is not going to affect neighboring properties and there's not going to be the runoff of water and cause impacts to those surrounding properties. So again, that's been looked at and will be subject to further detailed design at site plan approval should we get to that stage.
Okay, great. We have a question. Is it, for you, Mr. Flewelling?
Thank you, and thank you for coming back up. I just wanted to touch upon those two things. So I did hear you say that you would consider further, I'm going to call them security measures for the resident at the end of that street. So even if it was something, just to provide that extra level of security, like even double layers of armor stone so a car couldn't even conceivably jump it, that's something you'd be willing to consider?
Through the chair, absolutely. It's a very valid concern, and the appropriate measures need to be taken on site. So if a second layer of armor stone or something else that, if somebody has a better idea, would certainly would consider that. Okay,
I really appreciate that. The only other question I had, just with respect to the concerns from Mr. Bryant in terms of the setback from the properties on this side. I notice, if you look at the picture on the screen, unit number 3, the setback from the landscaped area looks like it's much wider than it needs to be. Maybe this is a question of staff. Is there any reason we couldn't, and it wouldn't be a huge improvement, but I think it would take any improvement we can get. Is there any reason we couldn't shift all 3 of those houses so there's only a 1 point, it looks like there's at least a 3-meter setback on that side. Is there any reason we couldn't just have a standard 1 or even less than a 1.2 meter setback, seeing as the landscaped area anyway, and then have a greater setback for those houses that are on Lang?
Through you, Madam Chair, you can certainly look at it again. Part of the problem is just having a sufficient turning radius for that short road onto the landscape area to make sure that any on-site movements for the fire route can be accommodated. The problem we ran into is, depending where you start that curve, everything slides over accordingly. But if there's an opportunity to tighten that up and pull things further to the east, I think we could certainly look at that through the site plan process.
Through site plan process, okay. Is there any possibility, we have, I believe, 2 weeks before council, is there any possibility that you could look into those 2 issues between now and our council meeting?
Certainly.
Okay, very good, thank you.
We have another question for you, Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Marsh. Just wondering if there'll be a speed limit inside the development. Will there be a posted speed limit on the access roads to the homes?
Through you, Madam Chair, certainly it's intended, well, it will be a private condominium road, and posting it at whatever speed's appropriate would be fine, and that could be built right into the condominium document. So it would have to be policed by the neighbors who live there, but again, I think that typically works pretty well in a condo development where they police themselves, if you will. So
yeah, I would imagine that inside that development, people would want to drive at a fairly slow speed, and especially if you've got a rounded corner there, that hopefully would not be driving much more than 30 at any point there, especially you have to slow down to pull into the Unit 1 driveway there. So that's just maybe a suggestion of having a speed limit posted and have that in the condominium agreement, that it's whatever you would feel was safe, a 30-kilometer limit would be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, those are all the questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any questions of staff or Councillor Davey?
Thank you. Just 2 questions. First is that a large number of trees are coming down on this property. I noted in the report that, without getting the nitty-gritty, that staff are cognizant of that and they are being remunerated in some way for those trees coming down. As part of the process, and I realize it's a site plan process, but all of those dollars, they go back onto this site to help compensate for the trees that are lost?
Through you, Madam Chair, absolutely. Compensation dollars will go directly back into this site.
Very good. I noticed I guess I should ask the developer this too, but the landscaped area on the right side of the screen here, looking at the Google Maps I did earlier, there's a number of trees there. Is that part of the reason why that road couldn't be pushed over? Are we trying to conserve more trees along that line?
That's correct. We had a previous iteration where the private road was right up against the property to the east, and we actually asked the developer to move it westward specifically to protect trees that were there.
Okay. And last question I need to ask, I know there aren't very many instances of this condo style for single detached homes. Are we aware of any issues, like obviously garbage and everything else has to be taken care of on site? Are we aware of any issues in any other properties where there's a situation like this?
Absolutely not. I actually went to a few sites that we have that are similar to this. Mr. Flewelling quoted an example on Glasgow Street, and I drove that and walked it and looked for issues, and I didn't find any there, and I looked at another one in the city as well, and I did not find any issues.
Okay, thank you. I'll have comment as well, Madam Chair.
All right, do we have a mover for the recommendation? Okay. Councillor Davey, you're the only one in the queue, so.
Okay, good, yeah. So I will move this. I have to say that from where this proposal started, and just so people don't think it was, I know oftentimes people think that developers start at a place that they have no intention of developing to get down to the place that they want to be. I know for a fact that this developer has built very similar developments to the original 18-home proposal in spaces not dissimilar to this. So there was a real significant movement, and I do credit our staff as well for getting down to a point that we're at here. I do have to say that these are never easy decisions for either the ward council or ward councillor or council as a whole. We realize that your investment in your home is the biggest one you make. But I have to say that honestly, there will be some difficulty as they're going through this building phase, but once it's done, I honestly do not believe that it will have any adverse effect on local property values. These are very large homes. The base floor footprint is almost 2,000 square feet per home. It's going to be an executive style area, which I think will only in the long run add to the property value of the homes in the area. I do want to make sure that we do everything we can to provide some assurance of safety for the property or for the road going in, and I think something along the lines of double layered armor stone should provide that absolute assurance. And lastly, I do think I hope in talks with the developer between now and council that we can shift over those top 3 homes over to the extent that we can and still be able to have that turning radius in. So with that, I will move this, Madam Chair, and thank you.
All right, thank you. So it's been moved. Any comments? All in favor? Opposed? And that carries unanimously. For the sake of the people in the gallery, the decision tonight is not finalized. It will be finalized at council. And so if you would like to be in touch with planning staff between now and then, please leave your contact information with them. All right, next we have the zone change application for 730 New Dundee Road, Principia Development. And so we have Mr. Craig Dumart, who will provide a 10-minute PowerPoint presentation on this matter and respond to questions, as well as the representative for the proponent will also be able to speak to it. All right, so Mr. Dumart, when you're ready, please click in. Oh, it's open. You're good.
Good evening, Ms. Chair and members of committee. Before you is a zoning bylaw amendment application received by the Planning Division for 730 New Dundee Road. The subject property is located on New Dundee Road near the intersection of Dodge Drive and New Dundee Road. The surrounding neighborhood consists of single detached dwellings located behind the subject lands on Blair Creek Drive. Some houses are built and others that are currently under construction are located on Blair Creek Drive. Directly to the east of the subject lands is a stormwater management pond. To the west of the property and across the street are large single detached dwellings on large agriculture zone properties. and a large residential care facility is located to the southeast of the subject property. 730 New Dundee Road is currently developed with a 2-story single detached dwelling. The subject property is currently zoned agriculture zone and designated low-rise residential in the City of Kitchener's official plan. The owner of the subject lands is proposing to rezone the lands from agriculture zone to convenience commercial zone. The proposed zoning will allow the owner to develop a neighborhood-scale commercial building that would serve the surrounding neighborhood and community. The owner intends to develop a 1-story, 578 square meter commercial building. The building proposes to include 4 commercial units in total, ranging from 129 square meters to 170 square meters. The proposed uses, location, and scale of the proposed commercial development are appropriate and will contribute towards a complete community. The neighborhood scale commercial uses, such as office, health office, personal service, convenience retail, and financial establishments, typically operate between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. weekday primarily. The proposed zoning will prohibit a restaurant use, which will minimize the hours that the commercial building will be open. The building is proposed to have increased setbacks to the rear of the property line, which will allow for adequate tree plantings additional to a required 1.8 meter visual barrier, which will further screen the commercial building from adjacent residential properties. Parking will be located at the side and mainly in front of the building and will have less impact on adjacent residential lands. The site plan process will address site function, including lighting, landscaping, safety, servicing, and the potential for a trail connection between the commercial building and adjacent residential subdivision, which will allow residents to walk to the neighborhood commercial building. Planning staff is of the opinion that the proposed zoning will allow for appropriate commercial uses along New Dundee Road. The proposed use is at a scale that is compatible with the existing neighborhood and provides a transitional use for the residential uses located directly behind the subject property. Furthermore, the proposed zoning will conform to its official plan designation. In conclusion, planning staff is of the opinion that the proposed zoning bylaw amendment demonstrates good planning principles and is consistent with the official plan designation on the subject lands. If there are any questions, I'll be here to answer them.
Okay, thank you. We do have some questions for you, Councillor Michaud. Thank you, Chair. Thank you. I was at the neighborhood public meeting that you had. I think there was a pretty good turnout. I think there are some neighbors in the audience. Thank you for coming out tonight. I hope that you take an opportunity to speak if you so choose. I do have a couple of questions and things I want to highlight. With regards to the proposed zoning prohibiting certain things, you don't have a service station in this document, and that was one of the requirements. It was a restaurant and service station is what I think that the people at the neighborhood meeting
As part of the staff report in the bylaw, it prohibits a gas bar and restaurant use.
Okay, that's good. Okay, and so the next question, so if should, and I'm kind of new to this, so bear with me, should this developer decide to sell, could someone new come in and put a restaurant in, or does that stop any restaurant or any gas bar going on that location for good?
Through the chair, it would prohibit all restaurant uses and a gas bar,
Okay.
no matter who the owner is.
Okay, thank you. That's good. And then the other concern that a constituent and one constituent, I guess, had, probably more than one, was the amount of traffic on New Dundee Road. And I tend to agree that is a concern. New Dundee is an incredibly busy road certain times of the day. On the traffic study, it said the region's threshold for requiring a traffic impact study is 100 trips in and out of AM peak hours. They talked about the trip generation from the proposed development at the above location would generate approximately 12 trips in and out AM, PM peak hours. The size of the development is too small to require any traffic study. When was this study done for this stretch of New Dundee? Like, what are they basing this on?
Through the chair. So the region's undertaking reconstruction of the road, so they would have identified the number of vehicles that are currently can be on the site now, and then they would have reviewed the size of development to determine the number of trips that would be generated. So due to the size of it, they've determined that such a small development as this would not require a traffic study, as it wouldn't contribute significantly to the number of trips that are currently occurring on the street.
So I'm sorry, I need some clarification there. They're not taking into consideration the amount of traffic going up and down New Dundee Road, because I think they said something like 900 vehicles per hour?
That's how many vehicles can travel on it in each direction. So in 1 hour, the current conditions of New Dundee Road could handle 1,800 cars. So they're saying an additional 12 cars would not require a traffic study and would not have any significant impact on the current road.
An additional 12 cars?
Correct.
There'll only be 12 parking spots in that whole site?
No, that's what they're anticipating would be the approximate trips in and out at an AM, PM peak hour.
I find that interesting when they don't even know what exactly is going in there yet. But I guess that's a regional thing. I would probably like more conversation on that if possible, more information on it. And the last thing, the neighborhood in this package, there was a lot of neighborhood discussion. There was a good turnout. There was good dialogue, I felt, at the neighborhood meeting. I think everyone left. You answered all their questions accordingly. But were all of the questions in this study, were they answered adequately to the people who sent in?
Through you, Ms. Chair, yes, they were.
Okay.
Councillor Michaud, Mr. Reedman wants to weigh in on your previous question.
Through the chair, so the square footage of the building, there's trip generation studies that are done that look at averages for square footages of different types of uses for buildings. Excuse me, and that number is generated based on that average assessment based on square footage.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we also have Ms. Kristen Barsdale here on behalf of the proponent from GSP Group. If you could please come on down. Do you have a presentation?
I don't.
Okay.
Good evening, Madam Chair. My name is Kristen Barisdale. We're here on behalf of Principia Developments. Mr. Joe Seston from the company is here himself as well, who intends to develop the site. So if you do have any technical questions with regards to construction or timing, I'm sure he'd be happy to answer that. As Mr. Dumart touched on, the intent is to provide for a one-story future commercial building on the site. The primary intent is to cater to offices, medical offices, health offices, financial institutions. Mr. Seston already has a number of potential lessees or occupants who have approached him from a medical and health background. That was kind of the impetus for him to look at designing the site. So I'm just here to indicate that we've had a chance to review the staff report. We are in concurrence with what staff are recommending, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you. There don't appear to be any questions for you. Thank you very much. All right, do we have a mover for this? Oh, are there any? Oh, I don't believe there are any delegates registered. It sounds like Councillor Michaud is asking if anybody would like to speak. Please come on down. Hello, please state your name, and just to let you know, you have 5 minutes to give a presentation.
Sure. Good evening. My name is Krushang. I am one of the purchaser right behind the proposed plaza. And actually, two of my other colleagues, they are here also. They have the houses right behind the new property. One of the one of the recommendation we have when we had a meeting, they were neighborhood consultation meeting. Behind our properties, there are some mature trees. These are really like decades old, long, tall trees, and that was one of the big point when we bought the property, these properties, that we will have a green line behind our house, and we would like to see that some plan or some confirmation that those trees will stay. In fact, it might be dense further if possible. That's the only comment I have, unless. If there are any other comments.
Okay, great. Thank you. So please come and register with the clerk. Mr. Dumart, do you have a comment about the trees? Trees were already mentioned in the presentation. I just want to ask you to confirm.
Yes, through Ms. Chair. So I touched on a little bit in my presentation. So the zoning will require a minimum 1.8 meter high visual barrier. Additional to that, there's 8.5 meters to allow for large trees to provide an additional buffer. The other thing I want to just note out is that council policy requires through the site plan process to circulate 60 meters to adjacent low-rise residential properties when a property is zoned commercial. So the residents here will be able to be involved in the site plan review process.
Okay, so so great. So they'll be able to talk about that. But so at this point, there's not an exact commitment to keeping the trees yet, but that will be done through site plan. Is that correct?
That is correct. A tree management plan would be required through site plan.
Tree management plan will be required through site plan. Okay, thank you. Is that all the delegates we have for this item? All right, so do we have a mover for this item? Councillor Michaud, any comments? All in favor? That carries unanimously. Thank you, everyone, for coming in. And next, we will invite Ms. Love to come down. Do you want a 5-minute break? All right, 5-minute break to get you set up. That's been 5 minutes, I think. All right. The seventh inning stretch, that's what that was. So thank you, Ms. Love, for coming back, and we're looking forward to your presentation. Let's see. Okay, all set, go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'm here to provide an update on the Development Services Review, and there are two things that I'll be sharing with you tonight. The completion of objective number 1 of the review, which is to establish a shared vision amongst various development services stakeholders prior to initiating a detailed review of specific development processes. And secondly, an update on the priority areas for the Development Services Review. During the detailed planning process for the review, over 255 stakeholders were engaged through a variety of methods, including our Engage Kitchener platform, one-on-one interviews, surveys, focus groups, workshops, and drop-in sessions. Key groups involved in establishing our shared vision are shown on the screen. And these include our Project Steering Committee, our corporate leadership team at the City of Kitchener, staff, council, the broader Kitchener community, and our development community. The goal of establishing a shared vision is to achieve broad alignment across all stakeholder groups in terms of where we want the community to be as a result of our collective contributions in development services, and also to describe our shared philosophies. It is intended that all stakeholder groups see themselves in our shared vision. As you may recall, when we met with Council in March for a strategy session, we presented 3 vision statements as well as a broader body of visioning work. We then tweaked and amended that body of work before taking it out to the community and the development community. What we're presenting on this slide here is our proposed final vision statement and mission that came out of the contributions of all stakeholder groups. And it is a city for everyone, working together, growing thoughtfully, building community. As part of this visioning work, 5 core values and associated commitment statements were also established. These represent how we commit to working together as a variety of stakeholders to build a great city and a great community. The 5 values are listed there and are bolded, and I'll start with leadership and read out the commitment statements. Leadership. We will commit to shaping a great community that is caring, vibrant, and innovative. Collaboration. We will foster a helpful, flexible, solutions-oriented approach to working together. Communication. We will communicate clearly, thoughtfully, and transparently with each other. Accountability. We will follow up, follow through, and make decisions with the best interests of the broader community in mind. And finally, respect. We will respect each other's knowledge, experience, and perspectives. Council should have a large print copy of the vision framework in front of them tonight. It's also on page 5.5 of the staff report. The last 2 pieces of the visioning framework include goals, which represent key areas within each commitment that each stakeholder group will work to implement. And finally, that bottom layer labeled actions, which represents specific steps that will be taken by each stakeholder group to implement their goals. So as we move down this visioning framework, we're getting more and more detailed. With a shared vision established, what are the next steps? From June 2019 to May 2020, staff will prioritize 2 areas for the Development Services Review: site plan and public engagement. These 2 priority areas were confirmed through a council strategy session in March. Through the review of these 2 focus areas, we want to ensure that all future process improvement recommendations will be aligned to and reviewed against our shared vision. Opportunities to streamline the customer experience in the site plan process include establishing a single point of contact from start to finish, creating and sharing process maps with our stakeholders, ensuring that processes are solutions-oriented and collaborative, considering new models of service delivery, coordination of stakeholder comments to ensure clear and consistent messaging, and reviewing the way that we deliver our services. So that could include things like flexibility, convenience, and empathy with our customers. Opportunities to streamline the customer experience. Oh, and I should note that there are more examples on pages 5.7 and 5.8 of the staff report for the site plan process. I just highlighted a few. All right, likewise, opportunities to streamline the customer experience for public engagement. Identifying opportunities to engage in more meaningful ways, creating a guide for citizens for community engagement, developing an engagement toolkit for those going out and doing engagement, sharing information about active development applications in consistent and meaningful ways, and improving access to information on our website. And again, there's additional examples on pages 5.9 to 5.11 of the staff report, so that's not an all-inclusive list of our opportunities to improve throughout this development services review. The recommendations to the committee tonight are as follows: that the proposed shared vision for the development services review be approved, and further that the site plan and public engagement processes be prioritized for review as outlined in the staff report tonight. That's report DSD-19-096. And that concludes my presentation, and we'll welcome any comments that you may have.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Singh.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm proud to say that, around the Horseshoe, along with myself and a few others, were strong advocates in wanting to push for and improve our development process. Simply hearing sometimes the negative feedback from a customer perspective that, when someone's bringing a development application forward, not necessarily just knowing all the moving parts, and in most cases, too many lead persons to be involved with and being ping-ponged back and forth. Throughout the review process so far, which has included a good public consultation, which is a good process, I think, to get a broad feedback from our community. Are we heading in that direction? Or has this taken a life of its own to something else?
Mr. Reedman?
Through the chair, in fairness for time for the presentation, it was a very condensed version, but absolutely we're looking at the site plan process and looking at it from the customer's perspective, and having a single point of contact as potential things we're going to be exploring through this process to stop that sort of bouncing around at City Hall, or that perception of that.
Okay, and I want to pre-qualify my comments. I'm not saying that we need to be per se open for business where we're bending all the rules for anyone, just more clear understanding. And is that, so that's what's going to be in putting forward a framework that puts that expectation? Is that what the next step would be, correct?
Through the chair, that is correct. So as Ms. Love had highlighted on page 5.7, it goes into a lot more detail on what is planned to be reviewed and desired outcomes as well on the table that's provided there on site plan review.
So what type of issues did we hear from the development community and through our consultation when it came to, now we're looking at the site plan process, what were the issues that they wanted most addressed?
Yeah, Ms. Love?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. We heard quite a variety of issues and concerns that stakeholders would like to see addressed through site plan, and that ranged from file management to clearer communication about requirements and justification for requirements, sharing process timelines at a macro level. And we really heard a strong theme of wanting a more collaborative approach to solving problems. There is more detail in the table, as Mr. Reedman noted, but those are some of the main comments, including just a better overall coordination of our development functions, so we don't have bottlenecks at certain time points in the process.
And so that feedback's well received, and that will be taken care of through the review process. Excellent. Good. Glad to hear it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Councillor Chapman.
Yeah. So I had never heard of lean methodology, and I thought I'd look it up. And some of the things I learned about it were that it focuses on improving performance, but it ignores democracy. So it's about making life easier for its customers, and in this case, I presume the customers are the developers, not the community. Well, this is what I read. Okay, so according to Harry Kenworthy, I'm not sure if you know that name, there are 10 commandments for lean in government. So this is specific to, not to corporations, but to government. And he focuses on the customer, the developer, the internal processes, the employee satisfaction, one-stop shopping, using existing knowledge, data collection, eliminating waste, improve quality, safety, delivery, and production, which is what was just reported. My concern is, or my question is, I don't know if it's a concern, my question is, where does community fit in? Like, we've thrown it in here, but if we talk about lean methodology, it's not a component of that. So that's my question.
Through you, Madam Chair, to answer the question, we're viewing stakeholders as the customer that walks through the door, as the applicant, but also as the broader community that is impacted through development. In terms of our lean review, we will be reviewing site plan, and we'll be reviewing public engagement as part of our first-year priorities. Part of the site plan process for certain types of uses is a public process, and so we'll be looking through a lens of both the applicant and those who receive and participate in receiving information. So that would be the broader community. In terms of the site plan processes that aren't open to the public, we've heard comments from both council and the community that at a minimum they would like to receive information on the site plan process so that they know what's happening in their community. And so we'll be looking at that through the process as well.
So some of those processes would be open to the public? Like at an earlier stage of the decision making? Is that the proposal?
Through the chair, we're not necessarily looking to open up the site plan process broadly to be a public process, but we will be looking at how to communicate better to the community what's happening in the community, similar to the way that we provide information on demolition permits, which has been well received. So it's not necessarily a full participation in shaping the decision, but it is an engagement in that we're sharing information in consistent ways and keeping the community updated. So throughout both lean reviews and site plan and public engagement, we'll be workshopping across this project with both internal and our external stakeholders in the community and the development community.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Marsh. I know we're saying in here we're going to look for opportunities to be flexible in the process, and I like that. But what can somebody do if they feel that we have not been flexible in the process? The odd time I've heard a comment like that we will apply the letter of the rule, not the spirit of the rule. So what recourse do they have if they feel they're in that situation?
Through you, Madam Chair, I don't think this review is about getting rid of all requirements and all process. So there will be a process to follow, but we recognize that there are gray areas in many things that we do, and it's about working out the flexibility in those areas. And so when we communicate these commitments and these values that we've established collectively with our stakeholders, I think it's a bit about context setting around that, and providing a bit more of explanation of what we mean by flexible. And we do want to be helpful, and we do want to work together to look for solutions, and we recognize that there will be many gray areas that we'll have to work through together.
Good. And I'm not saying getting rid of the process. I'm just saying that, you know, in that desire to be flexible, if they feel that we haven't been flexible, it's good to hear that we'll keep discussing and try and work through a gray area, and that's important. Thank you.
All right. There don't appear to be any more questions. Do we have a mover for the recommendation? Councillor Singh. Any comments? All in favor? And what's that? I did not see you ring in for comments. Well, okay, here we go. Councillor Galloway-Sealock.
You know I don't talk very long, so I won't be very long. I just quickly wanted to comment and thank staff for all the work that's gone into this. It's been a long road to get here, and being a part of the process has been really good to see, and the outcomes are good. And I look forward to the continued work that's going to come out of this. I think we've got a good base to work on now, and now we can really dive into the deep work and help make some of those changes. So thank you very much for everything you've done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'll just echo the thanks. We recognize how much work has gone into this so far just to get us kick-started into beginning the process. So I'm sure that you and your team will, the whole team will be excited to get moving along, and the community will be watching and be looking forward to the next steps as well. So with that, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And that concludes our meeting tonight. Thank you, everybody.